Okay. So, hi everybody. I am Melanie Barnum, and I am an author with Llewellyn Worldwide. And I'm here today with Angela Wicks, who is also an author, and she happens to be my acquisitions editor as well. So I've had a great time working with Angela. And we are both here to talk about our books today, our latest books. Mine is called Intuition at Work. Trust your gut to get ahead in business and in life. And Angela's is
The Secret Psychic.
Nice.
Full of tabs.
That's awesome.
It's embrace the magic of subtle intuition, natural spirit communication, and your hidden spiritual life.
Nice. So it's really interesting because I started working with Angela years ago, and she has been one of my biggest cheerleaders in getting my books out there and getting them published. And she has also asked me to contribute to her latest book, The Secret Psychic, that she just showed you. And I was amazed and so, how do you know what the right word is? So honored to be included in that, not just because of Angela, but also because of all the other incredible people that she had contribute to it as well. And it just gave me goosebumps, and goosebumps for me, if any of you know me at all, goosebumps for me are validation that what I'm telling you is true and accurate, or that spirit is present. And I think that, definitely when we're talking about intuition and secret psychics, I think that that is a huge part of who we are and what we're doing. Our intuition is there. Spirit is around us, and that energy, it's just that energy that kind of connects us. So, like I said, my book is about intuition at work. And it's very interesting because people ask me all the time, what made you write this book? And the reason that I wrote this book is because I was sitting around one day and I was at what we call a goddess weekend. And it's a weekend where I spend with a lot of other women, like-minded women, but not necessarily people that use their intuition all the time or that tune in all the time. I was with, a variety of people, psychotherapists, doctors, lawyers, everybody, medical healers, as well as holistic healers and holistic people. And we started talking about what intuition at work meant for them and what it meant for me. I use my intuition to do my work. So I am a professional psychic, and I've been practicing for over 20 years. I see people on a regular basis. Now it's all virtual, but I do readings for people on a regular basis. So I'm constantly tuning in. So for me, using my intuition at work is kind of a no-brainer. But for other people, right? For other people, it's not always as prevalent, and they don't always recognize that they're using their intuition at work. So I set about to write this book to kind of teach people that it doesn't have to be either or. You don't have to cut off your intuition in order to be intelligent and to tune into that intelligent part of your brain. You can use it in conjunction, and that makes you even more intelligent. It brings your ideas, your thoughts to reality instead of kind of stuffing everything back down inside. And it becomes a way that you can connect not only to your own energy, but to the people around you and to the other people that you work with, so that it can help you, whether you are a medical professional and you need to kind of tune into your patient, or whether you are working in marketing and you need to know kind of how to sell the next product for your client. Doesn't matter. If you tune into your intuition and you begin to use it, it can help you no matter what. And the other thing about intuition at work is that it's kind of a play on words. So it's not just using your intuition at work. It's also putting your intuition to work for you. And that was really, again, the main reason that I wrote it, is because I feel like I know actually that everybody has this inherent intuitive awareness inside. And whether we call it that or we call it something else, or we don't acknowledge it, doesn't really matter, because it's part of our birthright. It's there. It's always been there. Now, there is a difference, I believe, between intuition and psychic, because intuition, as I said, is something that we all have. It's something that we can tap into, a mother's intuition, a cop's hunch. You've heard all these things, and that's really intuitive awareness. Doesn't matter what it's called. But then if you take it a step further and you really begin to develop it and you start to kind of read other people and do readings for other people, that's when you're kind of going into that professional psychic realm. And so it's a little different. And I liken it to everybody can hit a key on a piano, but not everybody is going to be Beethoven or Mozart.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about the ability to take it to that next level, the ability to take it to the ability and the desire, I should say, to take it to that next level and to not necessarily devote, but to kind of devote yourself to, continuing to practice and continuing to work on it so that you can bring forth the best information for yourself and for others. So again, intuition at work is kind of using your intuition at work to create the best possible life that you can have and to kind of create and discover your strengths, your weaknesses, and your greatness that's inside of you. And also putting your intuition to work for you. Now, as I said, I was very happy to be asked to join and to contribute to Angela's book. So I would love to have you guys all hear what Angela has to say about The Secret Psychic.
Before I dive into mine,
oh, nice.
I just wanted to say, like, one thing about your book is that I loved to see the progression that you've had in every book that I've worked on with you. And I have to say, the first book that I worked on with you was your Psychic Symbols book, which I absolutely refer to still to this day many, many times. And that was actually the very first book that I can remember sitting down and doing an editorial review on when I started working at Llewellyn. So it's this memory that is very distinct in my mind of like, wow, I'm working with this author and this book is amazing. And I was so excited. So you are very, very prominent in my memory with that specific book. And then from there, just to see the progression of all of the different things that you continued to talk about in your future books, including your little book of psychic development, which now sits alongside Little Book of Unicorns, which today is National Unicorn Day. So we have to have a call out for that too. So now we have these books that just kind of like are so partnered and sitting together on the shelves. And I really, really love that. And I think working with you definitely has helped me progress in my own development, which helped lead me to having the knowledge and having the background and the understanding of my own experience so that I could write about it in my own material too. So thank you for everything you've done for me too in that way.
Oh, you're so welcome. And thank you. That just really makes me feel really good. And by the way, the goosebumps are popping again. For sure. I have the goosebumps again.
So for me, writing The Secret Psychic, it came from two different pieces of myself. One piece was this side of grief that I still today continue to heal. When we lose someone, we're always healing from it. It's never this wound that entirely goes away. But in processing the loss of my sister, I was writing a lot about our experience when we were alive together and then our continued bonds after she passed away and all of these crazy, incredible experiences, psychic experiences, spirit communication type things that were occurring for me and then for other family and friends. And I thought I was writing a memoir. And then after a certain point, I was kind of like, a lot of this actually isn't good and I don't want people to read it, but there were certain stories in that were just like, I wish I could share these things with people in some way, but I just assumed that it was an exercise in grief and it was just for myself, and so I put it in a drawer and it sat there for years. And then so part of this side was grief and this continued bond with connection and spirit and that spirit communication, which is where my heart lays with psychic ability, is that spirit communication piece. The other side of it came from this journey as the secret psychic, where I've had these kind of subtle ability insights, clear empathy, where you're connecting to other people's emotions, tuning into other people's thoughts. These things would happen occasionally when I was a kid, and sometimes they were so prominent that I was just left really confused, and I didn't understand. I didn't have a context for what was happening in these instances. And for some reason, I've always just been a really private, unsure, like I assess things in my own mind and I don't really vocalize to others around me. And that's just kind of always who I've been. So I don't remember sharing these experiences with other people, but just kind of trying to figure them out on my own. And then into adulthood, that continued. Like I've just always been the secret psychic of trying to learn on my own and figure things out on my own in this own secret space. And I eventually had a friend who started going through kind of the same things, and we started actually talking about these experiences. And because I had gone to classes and been learning about things for so many years prior to her, I started answering the questions that she also had that very paralleled my own experience. So it was at that point that I was like, wow, our journeys have been so much the same. They're all in secret. Like there's this side of us that's so private, but we just want to share about it, and it's so amazing. And it was at that point that I just had this light bulb moment of there has to be a resource on this topic for people, because I know that there are so many other people out there going through the same type of thing. So that's when I started writing The Secret Psychic. And as I was writing The Secret Psychic, I started having these realizations of, oh my gosh, that one story that I wrote down from that memoir that I was writing would be a really good example for what I'm talking about right here. So they kind of ended up merging at that point, and that's how the book came about. So what I get into is really learning about the basics of psychic ability, what these abilities are, what's going on. And then something that I haven't seen in many other books is like when these abilities start to seep into your everyday life in those types of confusing ways, what that looks like and your everyday experience and what you can start to do about it to kind of get a handle on things. And then I go into that spirit communication, what that all looks like, how it breaks down, how you can connect with the people that you might have lost and continue those bonds. And then I dive into that secret psychic side of yourself, how you can work alone. And then if you decide that you start wanting to share with other people or connect with other people in your own journey, how you can start to do that safely in a way that feels really supportive, where you aren't doing it out of fear, but you're doing it from a place of empowerment. And then in the second section of the book that you were talking about, Melanie, I interviewed people like Melanie, who are professionals who've been doing this for years and so have a really solid foundation in this world of the psychic ability. So I was interviewing Melanie, Cindy Dale, John Holland is in there, Christine Robinette, Michael Mayo, Danielle McKinnon. There's a lot of, I think there were 12 people that I interviewed. And so I threw out all the questions that I had, and I ended up actually mining from 2 years of texts between me and this friend and pulling out all of the questions and the main topic discussions that we kind of would just get on these long tangents about. So it was a lot of mining from my own experience, from my friend, from the experience of authors that I've worked with and classes that I've taken. Just all these different insights came together in this one resource that I hope will really help people.
Yeah, Angela is talking about the interviews that she did, but they were such good questions. I mean, they were so in depth, and they allowed us to be so in depth.
Yeah.
the answers just kind of, I don't know about all your other contributors, but the answers just kind of flowed right out of me. And I think it's because there are questions that people ask all the time about, how do you work? What do you do? And these these questions broke it all down for you, and broke it all down for me to be able to answer for other people. And B, it was kind of oh, wow, she's making me think about, what the answers are to these things. And you realize when you kind of put it together and you read the different responses from all the people that you've kind of interviewed, and so much is the same.
Yeah.
The process may be a little bit different, and it may be a little bit different how we got into it. Some people have had traumatic experiences or have lost loved ones at a very early age that they were really close to, and that kind of brought them to the next level. My journey was not the same as that. So I didn't have the same experience with that. But when you go beyond, when did you first realize it all kind of meshes.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're talking about the secret psychic, but it's almost like there's no secret.
Right.
We all have this.
Yeah.
So whether you are, a professional, or whether you take it beyond and, that there's something there, that you're connecting in some kind of way, like you obviously did. You knew that you had it. You knew that there was something happening there. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter whether you've been talking to dead people since you were a baby or whether it just started now. Everybody progresses at their own speed, at their own level. But it's all kind of the same thing.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that was the most exciting to me when I was getting the interview responses back. In a lot of ways, I had these aha moments of like, oh my gosh, that's how it is for me. Or, oh my gosh, that's how I started too. And, when I'm talking to people like you who've been working in this field for decades, it was really validating. And that's what I'm hoping that readers will get out of it too. And I don't do professional readings. I consider myself more the everyday person, I guess. And I think that I can kind of lead readers of okay, I'm just the everyday person and these are the professionals, and you can see both sides because I'm part one and they're part two, but we're all the same.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter where you fall in the realm, if you're in part one or you're in part two, like what you're saying, we kind of all have our own way of working, but we're wired the same when it comes to these abilities. So they're in there some way, in some shape and form. And they just come out.
It's interesting that what you just said, that we're wired the same. So we all have, like we both said, we've all got these abilities. We all have these gifts, these natural gifts, but they present differently to different people. So depending on, whether you are more clairvoyant, which is clear sight, or whether you're more clairaudient, like clear hearing, or clear empathic, or clear sentient, which is more feeling or feeling other people's energy, their emotions, doesn't really matter, because it's all, it's all your psychic ability or your intuitive awareness that you're tuning into. It's all of that. And some people are more prevalent in their physical senses with one or the other. So some people, maybe better artistically, or they see things differently. And that may help them to be able to see things clairvoyantly or, psychic sight, because they're naturally in tune with that sight, that physical sight. So artists, people that sculpt or paint, they may have more of that psychic sight, whereas a musician or somebody that's a professional speaker even may have more of that clairaudient ability. They may hear things better. And somebody, like you said before, you're kind of more of an introvert. You did things kind of by yourself and you kind of process them yourself. You feel things.
Yeah.
And, you have that clear empathic ability, but you also, I'm sure, have the clear sentient ability. You feel it in your gut.
Yeah.
And sometimes the clear cognizance too, that clear knowing, you just know things.
Yeah.
And that is where you have to start trusting. You have to start trusting that it's not something you're making up. It's not something that you're creating from nothing, because it's really difficult when you're used to the tangibles, all those things that you can actually touch with your hands and you could smell externally. When you start to get those things internally, those are the intangibles. Those are the things that you can't prove externally. Because they're not there externally. And so it's hard. And a lot of people find it very difficult, whether it's, with using their intuition to help them at work, or whether it's using their intuition and saying, oh my gosh, am I crazy? Like, is this really happening? A lot of people struggle with that because it's very difficult to prove that it's not just your imagination.
Right.
And you mentioned, taking classes and practicing, and I did the same thing. When it was, over 20 years ago. So like 26 years ago, I think. I'm only 27. So, I must have been an infant at the time. But way, way back then, I still remember it to this day. It felt like I was hit over the head with like a big club, even though it didn't hurt, but it felt like I was hit over the head with a big club. And I heard the words, "You need to do this work now." And I was kind of like, what? That does not make any sense. And am I crazy? Am I making this up? Because it felt like my imagination, but at the same time, I knew it was real. Like, I knew that there was no denying it. There was no arguing it, but I was very rational, right? It's hard for me now to say rational versus intuition, because to me, it's the same. But for a lot of other people, it's hard to merge the two from rational to intuitive.
Yeah.
But I was very rational. I was not just going to hang out a shingle that said psychic, because I was the controller of a company. I was the boss. I was in charge of everybody. And I was an accountant. And then I left that job shortly after I was hit over the head, because I knew intuitively that's not what I was meant to do. But I opened a children's store. So here I was, the owner of a business. There was no way I was going into that, irrational part of me, that was crazy, right? So I knew that I had to do it anyway. But in order for me to do it and feel good about it, I needed to know how it worked. And I needed to know kind of the science behind it, because it actually is scientific to an extent. It's very scientific. And so I did what you did, and I started taking classes and practicing constantly. And I offered free readings to people for years. I was doing free readings and just studying and reading and learning, because I needed to have both sides. I couldn't just say, okay, I'm done with, my professional business career, and I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to go be a professional psychic, which was a little crazy. I couldn't do it. So I needed both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it wasn't a hit over the head moment. It was this yearning. Part of it was, I felt really alone especially in my teenage years. And so I started reading a lot on spirituality then as like a form of comfort and inspiration. It was like a way that I soothed myself, I guess you could say. And there was just that really, really strong yearning that I had for this spiritual connection and communicating with those in spirit, and I don't know, just knowing that side of myself. Yeah. And it continued to grow from there. And I think there was that part of me that knew that I was using these abilities, but I think the logical side of me didn't recognize that for a very, very, very long time. But yeah, for me, it was just this draw that had kind of always been in me. And reading was definitely where I started to. I read everything I could get my hands on, which was harder at the time because internet wasn't around. And the library selection was limited, but I got what I could find.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now we're lucky, like you said, because not only is the internet around, and not only is there more, or are there more options at the libraries or your local bookstores, but there's also more of an acceptance.
Yeah.
So people are more willing to open up a book called The Secret Psychic or Intuition at Work or any of our other books. And people are more apt to kind of jump on the bandwagon. 10 years ago, if I told people I was psychic or that, I was doing professional readings, people would be like, okay, so all right. And, some people kind of fall to the wayside and be like, she's a little crazy. But I'm also very normal. So, as much as I have no issue with people that I kind of refer to as woo-woo psychics, the ones that are always on, the ones that are always out there, compared to other people, I'm still that accountant inside. I still have that. I'm still a lacrosse mom. I have a couple dogs, so, I'm still that person inside, but I'm also psychic.
Yeah.
So, nowadays people are a lot more open to it and a lot more able to understand it. And as you said, for me, it was also the yearning, when that happened, I was already kind of at a place where I knew I wasn't happy with what I was doing. And I had always been able to read people. I just never knew that was anything special. I thought everyone did it. And it was like 2 days later, I think I went and I actually had a reading, and I kept feeling like I was on the edge of a cliff, like ready to dive into something, but I didn't know what it was. And I went and I had this reading, and she just looked at me and she said, we have to, and I get goosebumps every time. We have to talk about this before I can tell you anything else that's going on. I also get itchy in my hair, just so you know, on top of my head, every reading I get itchy. It's not because I have bugs. My hair is usually out to here. There's no bugs. It's just the energy that comes through. And she said, we have to talk about this before I can go to anything else. She's like, you're at the edge of a precipice. You're about to dive into something and it's going to change your entire world. And that's exactly what happened. And you also talked about something that was very dear to my heart. One of the contributors in your book is John Holland. And when I started taking classes, I took classes with him.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so when we talk about, taking classes with somebody like John Holland, you're not in there with like 5 other people. You're in there with like 400 people.
Yeah.
Okay? So I'm at this place called Omega. And this is like 20 years ago, 25 years ago even. So I'm at this place called Omega, and Omega is a holistic learning institute in New York. It's kind of an immersive experience. So you live on campus for a couple of days, and it's fantastic. So I was there, and what happened in the class is that we would break up and break out into individual groups and just kind of practice and do our thing. And, he would kind of lead everybody and tell you what, tell the groups what we're going to do and everything. And at the time, I was already starting to practice professionally, but not because I wanted to be sneaky about it, but I didn't want people to know what I did.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want them to like kind of look at me differently, or, there's always that extra expectation if they know what you do.
Right.
And, you're in there with a bunch of just lay people, not just people that want to do professional readings. And, excuse me. And so I didn't tell anybody that I did this professionally already. And I was in this group, and they just kept saying, like, I was getting all these hits on everybody's deceased loved ones and just intuitive hits and everything. And they just kept saying, oh my God, like, you have to do this. You have to do this. And then like that night, John Holland was going to do a demonstration of mediumship. And so whoever wanted to come, not just for our class, but I think it was everybody that was there taking whatever class could come.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going, and I sat between 2 people, a mother and a daughter, who were in my group earlier. And they just would not stop talking to me. We're sitting like almost near the front row, and we're in like these seats on the floor, and they just wouldn't stop talking about, you need to do this work. And I finally had to tell them, I said, look, guys, I wasn't trying to like, diss you or like scam you or anything, but I am doing this work, and I'm still new at it. So it still is scary for me to put myself out there. Right. And to let everybody know because of that expectation.
Yeah.
And so John Holland comes walking up on stage, and as he walks up, he starts talking, and he says, I'll be right back or whatever. And he says, okay, you guys have like 5 minutes, and I'm going to go and come back. And, he was going away to kind of do his meditation and get ready for the show, the demonstration, the experience. And what happened was, while he was doing that, the people I was sitting next to said, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do with this? Now that we know that you're a professional,
Yeah.
like, where do you want to go with this? And I said, well, I love doing what he's doing. I love getting up in front of people, and I love doing group events like that, which I've done, by the way. But I'm just too scared, because what happens if nothing comes through? It doesn't even matter like how good you are. Like, if nobody comes through to tell you their story and to help you connect to the people in the audience, what are you going to do? You're not just going to make stuff up. So you're not only, you not only have that feeling of I'm not good enough, but you also have that, that worry, that expectation that what if nobody comes? And what if there's no spirits that come to me? Right. And I was explaining that to them. And then all of a sudden, the lights dim again, and John Holland comes walking back up, and he's walking back up, and I'm sure he doesn't remember any of this, but I remember it because it was a turning point for me.
Yeah.
He starts walking up the stairs, up the stage, and he stops halfway up the stairs, and he turns and he looks into the audience, and he says, goosebumps again. And he says, every time I do this, he's like, I always worry that nothing's going to come through, that nobody's going to show up for me spiritually, that nobody's dead people are coming through for me to be able to, do a good job for you. And then he looks right at me. Now, you could say he's looking at the whole audience, but even the people next to me were like, oh my God, he pointed to you. And he points to me and he says, but I trust spirit will come, and I trust that they will be here for me to help give you messages, and you should trust it too. Mm-hmm. And then it was like he just, didn't even realize he said it. He turned his head and he just walked back up, and he started his whole show. Talk about goosebumps.
And I'm like ready to cry, and that's my thing.
And it's so common. I have like goosebumps all over my whole head and everything.
Yeah, I say for me, I get the sparkle where it's like I feel like my energy grows. That's my thing. And then I also feel like I want to cry because it's like that energy is just getting bigger, and that's how it comes out for me. Yeah. That's really cool.
It is really cool. And you're talking about that energy getting bigger. It can be overwhelming sometimes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's this huge presence, this huge kind of, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's heavy, but it's kind of this huge thing that over you.
Yeah.
I totally understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. The trust and the faith when it comes to doing mediumship is really challenging, but really vital. It's something that I've been wanting to get more into. I've trained in it, and I've dabbled here and there. And I know that I have that ability. I think everyone does, but I've done readings here and there that have been like, wow, when you have it where it's like, wow, that was really real and I can do this. Holy cow, that just happened. And then I've had the ones where it's like, I don't hear anything, but I know it's my own energy, that it's like I'm sucking on the straw too hard and pinching it tight, and I'm not letting that energy in. And finding that balance can be, I think when you're a beginner at things, is really hard to find sometimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not just being a beginner either. You have been doing this for a long time, mm-hmm. even though you weren't out there as much as you are now with your newest book. I've been doing it for a long time, and it still happens.
Yeah.
When you try too hard, it doesn't matter how advanced you are or how professional you are. When you try too hard, then it just sometimes feels like you're just being blocked off.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing coming. And I totally understand what you're saying about that.
I think something that really is helpful is writing down when you have things that are kind of that just like come to your attention that's like, oh, that was kind of odd, or I noticed this thing, or whatever. Or if you have hits where it's like, holy cow, I can't believe that just happened, like writing those things down, because then you can look back and be like, oh my gosh, that really did happen. Or, oh my gosh, now I can put these pieces together and this is what it means. So I think recording things can be really helpful.
I agree. You know, a lot of professional psychics or a lot of psychic teachers will tell you that validation isn't necessary because you're supposed to kind of go beyond your own ego.
Mhm.
Um, but I disagree because I do agree with you. I think that validation is actually very important so that you can know that you're doing something right or that you're on the right path.
Yeah.
Because if you go, you know, say for a year and you don't try and receive that validation, or you know, just are constantly putting things out there or saying things or assuming that you're right all the
Mhm.
time, then you just don't know. And it's not fair to yourself and it's not fair to other people if you're,
Right.
you know, giving false information because you believe it to be true, even though you've never had validation for it. So I think
Right.
validation is actually very important so that you can know what you're doing is, and it doesn't have to be the right way, but just know what you're doing or what the information that you're receiving is kind of correct.
Yeah. And I think it's the difference between believing and logically thinking about something in a certain way, like having that level of understanding versus the level of understanding where it's like, I feel it, I know it, it's true. Where one example of this is like energy work. Like I can study it, I can understand it, I can believe in it. Like I believe that it's real. But I've gone years where I have, like I used to do massage, and so I used to do energy work really regularly. And then I've gone years where I haven't practiced on people, and it's like, oh, I still believe in it and I know it's real and whatever. But then I've actually worked on someone or gotten a session myself, and it was like, holy cow, this is real. I forgot how real this is. So it's kind of like going beyond the logical belief to the experiential relief, where you know it to your core.
Exactly. And that makes, again, that makes perfect sense because the validation takes you beyond your imagination,
Yeah,
right?
right.
It
Mhm.
brings you to the kind of that next level. And I have to say, I wish we lived closer because I would love for you to practice massage and energy work on me anytime.
Oh yeah, it used to be just my daily life, and then I started working at Llewellyn, and it became more books and working on books and helping people in that way. So yeah,
Well, I think that you found your calling. I mean, there's no doubt because I know, and I'm giving you validation that you are an amazing editor and you're an amazing person to work with.
thank you.
Um, but you're also, you know, so much more than an employee at Llewellyn working for other people because obviously you've got so much more going on and so much more waiting to come out. So, you know, there's a lot happening there.
Thank you.
Which also kind of leads me to one of the things in my book. You know, one of the main reasons that I wrote the book also is because I feel like um, finding your greatness, you know,
Hmm.
and who you are and kind of what makes you happy,
Yeah.
huge. And when you can use your intuition, when you can use that which you already have to discover that, then once you discover that thing or that vocation, that whatever it is that makes you feel full, that makes you just feel good to wake up in the morning. Once you discover that, it's not work anymore. You
Yeah.
know, it just feels so right.
Yeah.
And I know it's cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. You know, if you do what you love, then you're never going to work a day in your life.
Hmm.
Right. And that's people around me talk about how they have to go to work or they have to do things. My lights are flashing out of nowhere. I think that's total validation what we're talking about. My phone just started dinging and my lights are flashing. Interesting. But you know, if you are able to do that, if you're able to discover what makes you happy, and you know, if that happiness can lead you to a career or doing, my lights are still going.
It's so wild.
And they're doing it at different times too. I have like 3 different lights on, and they're doing it all at different times. Interesting. But if you're able to do that and you're able to discover that about yourself and what makes you tick, you know, it's it's an amazing achievement. And it's something that if you get nothing else from being intuitive or being psychic, or if you get nothing else from it, and you take that away, your greatness, then I think you won. You know, you're there. And having said that, it doesn't mean that what makes you happy can't change. Because,
Right.
you know, working with other authors, that doesn't have to be in the same capacity all the time. You know, you are now working with other authors because they're contributing to your books.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be in the same capacity. You could be doing different things, and, you know, you can change it up as well. It's interesting because I never thought in a million years I was going to be a professional psychic. I did always feel like I was going to have a book or two under my belt, but I never thought it was going to be about intuition.
Yeah.
So,
it's funny how you have the breadcrumb there and you try to logic your way to what the end result is going to be. Yeah. And sometimes it's just not. I thought I would be writing fiction, and maybe someday I will, but nonfiction is all the way where I'm at. Yeah. And I have been for, 11 years solidly. So, and that's where I'm writing. Those are the authors that I work with. It's not what I thought I was going to be in, but that's where I am. So,
well, it's funny.
Books.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny you say that because I have 2 novels that I started, and one of them I actually started this past year, but the other one I started probably 10 years ago, and I had half of it done. And
awesome.
Well, interestingly enough, it is about a psychic detective.
Yeah. So that's appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. So it's still in the same realm.
Yeah.
But it, they're
I love that because you know how it actually works. So it's authentic.
Yeah. So I mean, they are fiction, but they are based on facts, right?
Yeah.
On truth. So yeah, I get that. I totally get that. And you have that urge to write. Mm-hmm. There's kind of nothing that holds you back.
Yep.
So how do you feel now that you have your second, book of your own out there? You have, not only the complete book of unicorns,
Little Book of Unicorns,
sorry. But you also have now the Secret Psychic book. It's got to be like huge for you. It's got to be make you so like fulfilled.
There's always been this part of me that was like, life is on a timeline and there isn't enough time and I'm not going to achieve what I need to achieve. There's always been this sense of panic. Mm-hmm. And after I wrote the Little Unicorn book, I felt like, I can breathe now. There was like this feeling like I can die now and it will be okay because I wrote my book. Which is just so weird, but there was this thing in me that was just like, I have to achieve this thing. And I never quite knew what it was. But once I wrote that book, I felt this kind of relief. And after I finished writing The Secret Psychic, I had this immediate sense of resolution. And I think that comes from my sister passing away. And, I didn't get to say goodbye to her. And there's just a sense of closure. As soon as I submitted the final draft, it was like I could breathe again. And it was like, okay, now I can move on with my life. Because it's just like this story has been in me. And there was just this desire to share it with other people because it was so powerful. And also just being able to help guide people who might be on the same kind of secret journey, to be able to give them the tools that would have really helped me. And I think a lot of other people in the past, it brings me peace. And again, that sense of closure of like, okay, this is a chapter of my life that has been so significant and really important. And now it's out there and hopefully will help people. And now I guess I wonder and I'm curious about what the next chapter will be for me.
Well, I mean, 2 things I want to say about that is that it feels like your sister was definitely helping you to finish that book.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I could feel her and she was so right there.
Goosebumps everywhere. She's definitely validating that for you. Mm-hmm. So yes, it definitely feels like she was there to help you the whole way. And I forgot what the second thing was, but I guess that was the most important thing.
Yeah, it was, I totally forgot about this, but after I finished the book, I remembered that it wasn't until the publisher was doing the cover and they came to me and they were like, can we use some of your artwork for the cover design? And I was surprised because I know that they usually they don't request author artwork for covers because it just tends to complicate things. It's easier to use art that they already have access to. So when they requested that, I was just really surprised and I was like, okay. And then I just gave them everything I had and I was like, here you go. And they ended up choosing a painting that I did as a form of art therapy and processing a vision that I had immediately after my sister had passed away. And so when they chose that painting, it like woke me up and I was like, holy cow, I can't believe one, that they chose that. And also two, that I wasn't like, hey, okay, here's a painting and it has to be this one. And so, and then in that moment, I also remembered that my sister always said when we were growing up, when we were teenagers and in our 20s, that we were going to, one, write a book one day together, and two, that it was going to include my artwork in it.
Oh.
And when I remember, like now I have chills, but when I remembered that, I was just like, I just sat there just for a moment of just like, oh my God, it's happening. Like,
Yeah.
this was the book. I felt her the whole time I was working on it. Because like I said, I didn't know that she was going to be a part of the book. And I mean, she became a heart of the book. She's threaded through the whole thing in the stories that I tell. So she definitely wanted this to be it.
Yeah. I can remember, and stop me if you don't want me to share this, but I remember when your sister had first passed and you and I were just beginning to work with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she came through and I didn't know, at the time, I wasn't sure how to ask you because, I think like you were the same way. I shut it down unless I'm working because
Right.
I'm not going to go, stop somebody in the grocery store and I just got goosebumps again. So I feel like
Yeah.
she's here for sure. But I wasn't going to just shout out to you, hey, I think you lost your sister and she's here.
Yeah.
But I remember we had a conversation where I kind of said, hey, are you okay? Like, what is going on with you? And that's when you told me what had just happened or what you were going through. And I'll never forget it. It felt to me like she was telling me, and she's still telling me, that she's going to be with you forever. Like, she's never going to leave you. She's always going to be there for you. And she is also letting you know there's more books for you to write. So take it for what it is, but she's not gonna let you stop right now.
Okay.
So, there you go. There's more.
I'll stay curious.
Yeah, there's definitely more for you. And again, I apologize if I overstepped, but
Oh no, that's totally fine. I love hearing from her.
yeah. So we are getting close to the top of the hour, I think. But I just wanted to ask you, out of all of the feedback that you've gotten, and even out of all of the interview questions, the people that you interviewed, was there anything that stood out to you or surprised you that people had to say either about your book or people had to say about their experience and how they began working with their own intuition, how they began being a psychic?
One thing that stands out is that I was surprised by one of the contributors. I won't name a name, but this person is someone I've looked up to for a very long time. And I was surprised that their entry into their own psychic ability wasn't supported by the people around them. Because I guess I just have this assumption that people who are out there and they're strong in their abilities and they're really confident, I guess is the word, that confidence came with support. And that definitely, with the interview responses, was not the case. a lot of times it came with personal trial, with rejection and judgment, and a lot of times shutting down the abilities for a long time and then coming to them later when they could rely on themselves, when they had the strength to be able to rely on themselves. And that, I think, is what struck me the most, not just with this one person, but actually with many of the people that I interviewed, or maybe even most, I could say probably,
Right.
that there is this sense of, for a lot of people, having to grow into your own abilities independently through your own strength, I guess. And I'm hoping that the tides are turning, and I think that they are, like what you were saying before, where more people are becoming accepting, it's becoming more mainstream, that people are aware that the everyday person has these abilities,
Right.
and it's okay to talk about them and to share about our experiences, like visitation dreams, or if someone passes away and we still feel continued bonds, like it's okay to talk about those experiences and not have people dismiss them, or just say, oh, you're in grief, or you're crazy, or whatever. But that freedom to be able to share. So I think that was the most surprising, was just that realization that that sense of isolation isn't unique, like that I felt really alone in my own journey, but a lot of people have felt that way, which is part of why I was so excited to be able to offer this resource to people, because I think it's just such a common experience, unfortunately. But again, I think that the tides are turning on it.
I agree. I also think that, it's interesting when I first started, and even now, I talk about it as though, some friendships kind of fall to the wayside.
Yeah.
And what's interesting in my life is that I really don't have psychic friends.
Yeah.
I'm, as I said before, I'm pretty like normal.
Yeah.
I don't have that kind of psychic network or that psychic connection. I don't hang out with, other psychics, not by choice, just because it hasn't been anything that has presented itself for me, right? Or in my area. And it's interesting because I kind of liken it to politics. I'm friends with a lot of different people, and mostly we're on the same kind of wavelength politically. But for some, I really, really like them, and it breaks my heart that we're so, different when it comes to politics. But we just don't really talk about it.
Right.
And it's the same thing with my abilities. I do have some friends that I'm really good friends with. And we just don't talk about my abilities. We talk about my books, or, how my books are going, or, whether I'm going to do another book, is there a 9th book coming for you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we don't really talk about it because still to this day, they don't believe it. And I've had plenty of people that have, kind of gone like this to me, like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And then have come back to me a year later saying, I need your help. And that's happened many, many times. But for me, I never try and convert anybody.
Right.
It's kind of like religion and politics. I'm not going to try and convert you.
Right.
I'm not going to argue with you either. I'm not going to prove to you that what I do is real either.
Right.
But if you want to have an open discussion about it, I am more than happy to share my experiences or share how I work. If you want a reading from me, then you can, book a reading with me.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing to think about, that being psychic could be the same kind of situation as politics or as religion, because it's one of those very divisive things that people don't always accept. And you have to kind of learn that it's okay to be who you are.
Right.
And, trusting in your own abilities and your own gifts and your own intuitive awareness, your own psychic ability is okay. And, you don't have to prove to me, and I don't have to prove to you. And it's okay. And something like this is so intangible. It's hard to prove. And, if somebody, I once had somebody who, I was in like a local Facebook group, and I wasn't even talking in the Facebook group or anything. And it was just, like I don't even know what it's called, but it's like a town group or whatever. And somebody said, hey, I'm looking to have a party. I'm interested in having a psychic there to do readings or tarot cards or something. And I never do that. Like, it's just not my thing. I'm not going to go and be like that sideshow person, right?
Right.
Just not my thing. Great for other people, but it just doesn't feel comfortable to me.
Mhm.
And, some people started putting my name out there because they knew they had readings with me or they knew what I had done. And then one person didn't direct it to anybody, specifically. And they were like, yeah, if they're real, if there's really a psychic out there, then they can tell me what color underwear I have on right now. And up until that point, I didn't, like any of the posts that suggested me. I didn't say anything. I didn't type anything. And I was like, I'm responding to her. So I responded to her and I said, well, what color underwear am I wearing? Do you think I really care what color underwear you're wearing? Like, why do I need to tell you that to have you think any more or any less of me?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care enough about you to tell
Right.
you what color underwear you're wearing. Like, and it was that kind of, and she said, oh, I'm so sorry, and because it's that kind of a strange, intangible thing that people just, if it's not personal for them, if they haven't had their own personal experience, they
Yeah.
get it.
Right.
And until they have that experience, like I told you before, until they come back and they say, oh, can you help me? This happened, or I need, some information on this, or I need your advice for this, or, is so-and-so coming through because I miss them so much, all these things, until it happens for you and it's personal, you can think whatever you want.
Right.
So yeah, like you said, it is a weird thing being psychic or, putting yourself out there as intuitive, because no matter how good you are, you're always going to have people that don't believe in it.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. The immediate experience is really significant. It's the same with energy work. That brings it to a more concrete pinpoint for me, because that's been my practice in the way that I've worked with other people, where you can explain what it is and it totally sounds like fiction until you have the direct experience where you're getting energy work from someone and you can actually feel, or you have some kind of significant shift. It's really hard to wrap your head around it and to believe in it.
It really is. We all need that aha moment.
Right.
I mean, I've been doing this work again for over 20 years professionally, and I still, myself, knowing how real this is, I am still so skeptical of people.
That's how I am too.
So
I'm constantly shocked when I have hits on things, whether it's coming to me personally or if I hit for someone else. I'm surprised every single time still.
I am too, but I love it. I love those aha moments. I love when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share with my husband or something. I'll say, oh my gosh, I did this reading and this happened, and they were shocked, and I was like blown away that this happened and that this came through. And he just looks at me, he's like, why were you blown away? Like, because you don't get it. Like, it's so cool.
Yeah.
Like, and I live with you. Like, I know what you do. And I'm like, I know, but it's so cool.
Yep.
Like, goosebumps again. I still to this day, just the hits, like you said, getting those hits is amazing. It's so much fun.
It is fun.
Figure out, when you figure out what what makes you feel good, what makes your greatness come through.
Yeah.
It's not work anymore. You're just enjoying it.
Yep.
So, Angela, we have been talking for so long and it's been fantastic, but I think, unless we want to start a week-long podcast, I think we've gotten to that point where it's time to kind of say goodbye to our listeners and to those who are going to tune in afterwards. Where can people reach you? Where can people talk to you and find you?
I am on Facebook and Instagram at Angela A. Wicks, and my website is www.angelaann.wix.com/arts. And that's kind of wonky. So you can Google my name, Angela A. Wicks, and The Secret Psychic, and my website will pop up.
Awesome. Okay. And for me, just look up Melanie Barnum Psychic and you'll find me anywhere. I have 8 books currently. that are out there for you. Every book that I have has stories that help to explain concepts that I'm talking about from real life readings or from people that I've worked with. And they also have exercises to help you kind of dive in and practice your own intuitive awareness and practice kind of diving in if you're a secret psychic or if you're just curious about it. It also shares my backstory and how I got into it, even though I talked a lot about it, but how I started doing the work and how I connect for other people. And again, you can reach me, Melanie Barnum Psychic. My website is actually just melaniebarnum.com. And I teach workshops and lead virtual workshops all the time. So again, Facebook, Melanie Barnum Psychic, Instagram, Twitter, all the social media, LinkedIn. It was a pleasure to talk with everybody and to Angela, obviously, work with you again. And, it's always going to be awesome. And this was such a new thing for us to be able to do this together.
Yeah. Yes, I'm glad we finally got the chance to talk face to face.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Okay. I hear your puppy. He says it's time.
I know. Sorry.
It's okay. Mine was barking earlier. So. My lights have stopped turning off, so that's a good thing. One thing I do want to say to everybody out there is whether you are a secret psychic or whether you're practicing with your own intuition already, always protect yourself, ground yourself down to the earth. Don't assume that every energy that you take on is yours or that, you have to share it with everybody, but protect yourself so that you don't get overwhelmed and so that energy doesn't wear you down. But having said that, dive right in, enjoy it, use
and
it.
have fun. Yeah.
Yeah, have fun for sure. All right. It was a pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
And bye, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, I just took the recording. No, I didn't.